There are so many things out there that the enemy has designed to trip us up, so many traps that he has set for us, and it's God's desire that we avoid ever being taken captive in any way, shape, or form once we've received his freedom. In the book of Colossians, chapter 2, verse 8, it says this. It says, "See to it that there is no one who takes you captive through philosophy and empty deception in accordance with human tradition, in accordance with the elementary principles of this world, rather than in accordance with Christ." So 3 points on that very, very quickly. Number one, exalting tradition or philosophy contrary to Christ will lead to captivity. I've seen this happen so many times. People have exalted, and this was something that Christ ran into continually with the Sadducees and the Pharisees. Suddenly they had traditions, they had ways of doing things, and things that had been handed down to them that weren't necessarily bad in that particular context, but became contrary, became something extra. And once you do that over and over and over, those things can really pile up. And that's exactly what had happened. The traditions had really piled up to the point that they actually did become contrary to God's will and God's word. Point number two. God's word and revelation in Jesus is the believer's number one consideration. It is God's word, not man's traditions, not our cultural perspectives or our culture in general, but it's God's word and the revelation of Jesus Christ and who we are in him and who he is to us that should always be the believer's number one consideration. Number three, deception comes with deviation from God's word as our primary consideration. That's the snare that he wants us to avoid. When God's word and God's will are not our number one consideration, when we deviate from that, we get into trouble and ultimately fall into captivity. Listen, real problems require real solutions. So I want to encourage you to dig deep. Avoid being taken captive by digging deep in God's word today.